Joining us are Maggie Farrar. Maggie's worked in London and Birmingham and senior leadership positions in schools, in local authorities. She's been the Director for Leadership for the National College for School Leadership in England and now works as an independent leadership consultant. Faye McGuinness is responsible for development and delivery of education supports, mental health and well-being services and programmes. Education Support delivers the largest programme of professional supervision support for educational leaders within the UK. And Russ Dwyer joins us and is head teacher at St Thomas Community Primary School in Swansea. Russ has been head teacher there since 2013 and has led on several initiatives and has led and worked with projects including the network lead for the Athrova in Swansea, bringing Operation Encompass to Swansea, and currently is working on his project with other head teachers, newid, which we'll hear more about in due course. So our first presenter is Maggie. Please give her a warm welcome.
Thank you, Owen, and Boridal to everyone, and it's wonderful to be here, and I will be speaking in English this morning. I'm going to be exploring everything I've learned from working with leaders around where better well-being starts, and for me it starts inside. And that will be the theme of my few minutes I have with you this morning. But at first I want to start by saying huge congratulations to the Academy and to the associates for an absolutely, I think, excellent well-being entitlement for educational leaders in Wales. And it's so much more than a document, isn't it? I mean, it is so much more than a document, and a tremendously exciting move, I think, to really giving well-being some specific areas that we can work on. And I have to say that I was very lucky. Tegwyn, you and I were together on Friday at a compassionate leadership conference I was leading, and Tegwyn gave us a very sneak preview of what was being launched today. And I have to say, sparing your blushes, Tegwyn, you were absolutely inspirational. And the leaders from England were just enthralled by what you're doing in Wales. So I wanted to say that. So inner life, the inner life of leaders, that better well-being starts inside. It starts with us being able to have a balance in terms of our world, being as attentive to what's going on in here, how am I feeling, what am I thinking, as to what's going on out there. And this quote from Peter Senge says it nicely, that although we have many tools to manage the external world, we don't have yet the tools to really manage our internal worlds. And it's where the two coincide and come together that our leader happiness and our effectiveness is forged. So I want to share with you briefly just a few micro practices that you might want to explore in order to build some habits that will help you to be more in touch day in, day out with your inner world. Because as we heard earlier today, just in the previous presentation, that we kind of don't stay in touch with that enough, and stress and anxiety can build up, and before we know it, it may well be too late. So these simple habits I'm going to share very briefly are really about how you can safeguard yourself moment by moment, riding the ups and downs of school leadership. So the things that have helped me, and they really have helped me, and a significant number of leaders I've worked with over the years, are these three, and I'm going to name them very briefly, and I'll be here over lunch, happy to chat further. The first is notice when you're moving into overwhelm, find speed bumps during the day. The second is balance being and doing, and we can easily tip over into the doing very quickly. And the third is, and this for me is the heart of well-being, because it's the heart of leadership, is activate your core purpose, always. And this is really about honing your attention, being able to ask regularly, what's happening right now? What's going on right now? What am I feeling, thinking, seeing, hearing? And what would serve me best? What would serve my leadership in my school best right now? And I believe the art of leadership is all about the art of pivoting. And if we don't notice what's going on, we don't know we have a choice about the way in which we could pivot. Ask a question, give an answer. Speak, remain silent, wait, move. We don't realise we have a choice. And in those micro moments of choice, do live our well-being and our effectiveness. So briefly, find your own speed bumps. Here's an executive head teacher, Liz, from Thornton and Wilson Primary School in Bradford. She talks about giving herself permission to take her foot off the gas every now and again. Sounds simple, doesn't it? Ease up on yourselves. Find micro moments of pausing in the day. Stop, breathe, let go of the tension. Move on. Before you get out of the car first thing in the morning, waiting for assembly to start, waiting for a meeting to start, notice the impulse to reach for your phone. Instead, pause, find a speed bump, become still. There's lots of research on the importance of stillness and well-being. Very hard to find in a busy school day. The second, be balanced. Practice both being and doing. There are two modes in which we're always living and leading. The driven, doing, striving mode, getting the job done, really important in schools. The second, the sensing, the experiencing, the noticing and the watching mode. One is the task, the other is the relationship. Relationship with self and relationship with others. You may know of Ron Heifert's work, Leadership on the Line, Staying Alive Through the Perils of Leadership. He talks about being on the dance floor, getting stuff done, and being on the balcony, slightly stepping back and watching. Unfortunately, the dance floor is very alluring because we're very good at it, but we need to give ourselves permission to step back, to be and to do. What a small thing you can take away. We all write our to-do lists. I quite like them. I love a new notebook. I even write down things I've done so I can cross them off and feel better. I know we all do that. Balancing your to-do list with a to-be list, which only needs one or two things on it. What might it be? To be more curious, to be a little more patient, to be present for the moments that matter. Just choose one. Choose one as a senior team and see the difference it makes, because your to-be list wraps around your to-dos, but it means you're balancing the job, getting the job done and the task with the relationship with yourself and with others. And then finally and briefly, our core purpose activates well-being. It's at the heart of our leadership. I'm going to invite you as you leave today to notice every day in your school life the transitions as you move from conversation to conversation, meeting to meeting, in and out of classrooms. And every time we pass through a transition, particularly moving into a classroom, just pause again, that word pause, breathe at the door and ask yourself, what really matters to me as I cross this threshold? What's my core purpose as I walk into this room? And therefore, where will I place my attention? Will I always be drawn by the negativity of the bias of the brain, looking for what's wrong? Or will I be drawn into what's going well and needs celebrating equally? And when I'm crossing the threshold, how will I be? What will I model? Classrooms are hallowed spaces and need to be entered with care. And if we can reactivate our core purpose every time we enter a space, then we will be like the head teacher who said to me many, many years ago now, but I have never forgotten it. I want my school to be a place fit to house the human spirit. We all want that. But unless we're attending to our own spirit and our own heart, we cannot cultivate that for our schools. So, finally, simply build habits, micro habits. This is not making smallness out of what we're all facing, but it's giving you some tiny pointers to pause, to notice, to breathe, to choose which way to pivot, and to move on. If you want to go further into any of this, I would invite you to my website, which is there, has got lots of free resources, over 60 newsletters over the last 2 or 3 years, all on these themes and others, lots of stuff there on compassionate leadership. Please take a look. There's also a book. You don't need to get the book because everything's pretty much on the website and it's free. But there's a picture of a head teacher. She sent me a picture of her reading it while she was by the swimming pool on holiday. I'm not sure whether I really approve of that, but I was secretly quite chuffed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Maggie. Firstly, I just want to say it's so incredible to see so many leaders in the room wanting to have this conversation about your well-being, because that really matters. When I was thinking about coming along to talk to fellow leaders in the room, a quote stuck in my head from an amazing researcher called Brené Brown that some of you might have heard of. And what Brené says is, who we are is how we lead. And I'm a leader, so I can get on board with that. I believe that who we are is how we lead. But there was something about the quote that was niggling at me, and I couldn't quite work out what it was. But what it was that it's all very well saying who we are is how we lead, but what about how we are? I'm a leader. I like to think that who I am makes me a pretty okay leader. You might have to ask my team. But I also know that on any given day, how I am will impact on my leadership. So who we are needs to be made up of how we are. And working in education, when we think about the how we are, we have to think about 3 different levels, because how you are affected by these 3 different levels. First of all, as Maggie has touched on, you are individuals. You are human beings. And there will be things happening in your professional lives, in your personal lives, and everything else that goes with that will be impacting on your individual mental health and well-being. And we need to make sure that you have the right support as individuals to manage that. But we also have to recognise that you are individuals and leaders that operate in workplaces. And each of your workplaces will have its own unique culture. And there's a lot of pressure on leaders to create a culture that cultivates good mental health and well-being for all staff. That's a huge pressure on you. But actually, it's important to say that culture doesn't fall on the shoulders of one person. It's the collective. And it's made up of many different components. But we know from our Teacher Wellbeing Index that we launched last week, the 2024 index, that 51% of education staff think their organisational culture has a negative impact on their personal well-being. So we have to think about well-being at the culture level if we want to improve the mental health and well-being of individuals. But we also have to recognise that you as individual leaders working in organisations and workplaces exist in a much wider education system. And we know and we've heard that that system has many challenges that impacts you at the workplace level and impacts you at the individual level. So I think it's really important when we're talking about well-being that we recognise we have to do work at all 3 levels if we are going to make a real difference. So I just want to talk to you about what we at Education Support can do for you at each of those levels. And I'm going to start by saying it's all fully funded. You don't have to pay for any of this. So the first thing that I want to touch on, thinking about you as individual leaders, is professional supervision. This is mentioned in the Wellbeing Entitlement Report. I'm sure there's been lots of conversations that you've been having around professional supervision. At Education Support, we've now delivered professional supervision to nearly 3,000 school leaders. I want to make this point. Good supervision can be transformational for a leader. Poor delivered supervision can be the opposite. We need to be delivering good quality professional supervision to education leaders here. That's what we need to be delivering. And I feel confident that what we can offer through Education Support delivers that quality. You can see from some of the impact data in the evaluation stats, but what I will say is we are seeing leaders report back to us that it is transforming how they think about leadership, but we're also using the Warwick Edinburgh Mental Health Scale, seeing big improvements in leader personal mental health and well-being. We have enough fully funded spots for everybody in this room to sign up. We've got a stand outside, so if you haven't, please do. Maggie touched on being present. Maggie touched on purpose. Professional supervision provides you with that space. That's the first thing that I want to let you know about. The second thing for you as individuals is that there will be moments in your day where you feel like you need to speak to somebody. You might want to speak to somebody outside of your organisation, but you just need to offload. Our helpline is a place where you can do that. When you call, you will speak to a qualified counsellor who who will spend up to an hour on the phone with you. All staff should know about this, so if it's not in your school, please get it promoted. This is for you to call in the moment. So that's the two things I want to touch on for you as individuals. Quickly then want to move on to what we can do for you on that workplace culture piece. We have 4 regional advisors in your locations that will help you think about how you can support staff mental health and well-being. You don't have to do it on your own. It's a huge burden to think that you have to be the experts in culture, in supporting staff mental health. Let us bring that expertise to you. If you haven't signed up for the advisory service, you can see some lovely faces on the screen. And again, you can sign up outside. But we will help you think about how you can create those cultures that support better mental health and well-being for your staff. If your eyesight's anything like mine, you can't see this. So I will just say that people that have accessed the advisory service, schools that have taken part, have reported that they've seen a real shift towards an open culture, that they've seen a real meaningful and impactful difference, and that those that are leading wellbeing in their schools feel more confident because they've actually worked with an expert to be able to do it. So I can stand here and rave about it, but actually the schools that have engaged have found it very positive. And then I just want to make the last point that we know that there are many issues at the system level, and we've heard about many of them today. And if you look at our 2024 Teacher Wellbeing Index, we know that there are huge issues around pupil behaviour and violence that are impacting on staff. There's issues around parent behaviour and the impact on staff mental health and well-being. But we know that it doesn't just end there. There is a much wider system outside of the education ecosystem that is showing up in schools every day. The impact of the cost of living crisis, the impact of poverty, the impact of the increasing needs of children and young people. We have to look outside of the education ecosystem if we really want to make a change at that system level, because that's the stuff that is showing up day in, day out. So at Education Support, we continue to do research to advocate for those changes. But we know that system change takes forever. It takes a long time. So I want to finish off by saying that we need to bring it back to what Maggie was saying, the individual. And when I think about the individual, that's you as individuals, but it's you as a collective, everybody in this room. So what I want you to think about is an Olympic team, a gold-winning Olympic team. What does it take to be a gold-winning Olympic team? They don't just relentlessly train. That isn't just what it takes. They build time in for rest and recovery. That's an important part of being a gold medal Olympic team. They make space to look after themselves physically, mentally, and emotionally. They recognise that if they work out a muscle for too long, that muscle will eventually give way. Our brain is a muscle. We cannot let it give way. So, your mental health matters. It's about you being the Olympic gold medal winning team, because everyone in this room is the gold-winning Olympic medal team for delivering the best education to our children and young people. Look after yourselves because you really do matter. Thank you.
Prynhawn da, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and talking about something that we as leaders probably don't focus on enough, and that's our own well-being. I'm a serving primary head teacher and academy associate, and I'm very proud to have been part of the team that developed the commission report that's been presented to you earlier. Today, though, I'm going to talk to you about a pilot project that we ran last year in Swansea for primary head teachers called newid. The pilot was made possible through an innovation grant funded by the National Academy. Headship can be a really rewarding role, but it can also be a lonely role as well. And there's a wealth of research out there to show that it is also a stressful role. You know, I don't want to say it's worn me down, but I was 6'3" when I started, and I'm only 22. Jokes aside, it is a difficult role, and it's hard to know who we can turn to when we have that challenge, who can we speak to confidentially, and not everyone has a wide support network around them. In recent years, there's been emphasis on leaders embedding the whole school approach to emotional and mental well-being, but actually little focus within that approach as to what should be there in place for leaders themselves. We know that as leaders, and it's already been said today, our motivation and resilience has a direct impact on the people that we serve. So it is vital that we look after ourselves to be in a position to look after others. Clwyd had an aim to challenge and sort of support some of those things. It is a voluntary, confidential and compassionate service run by primary head teachers for primary head teachers or acting heads in Swansea. It was developed with supervision practices in mind, although we are not qualified supervisors, but the main focus was to have someone to listen and offer support when they could. It was made explicit that this was not to link to any form of monitoring, improvement or quality assurance purposes. Its sole purpose was for the leader and what they needed themselves. As such, there were three aims: to be listened to and heard confidentially to help lighten the load, to learn and discuss issues or ideas in a safe, non-judgmental space, and finally, to develop positive relationships and empower the profession as a whole. You know, as leaders, how often do we give ourselves space to reflect and talk freely? How do we vent without fear of judgment? How often are we worried about looking like we're not in full control? Clwyd was about giving that safe space to turn around and say, you know what, that really frustrated me. Or, I didn't know how to handle that situation, I could have done it better. Or, I'm not sure how to deal with this issue I'm going into, or how to develop this idea that I have. We need to be free to have those conversations. Clwyd wasn't about giving answers to people, but it was about giving them the freedom to feel that they could talk safely and confidentially. We started out with 12 volunteer heads, willing to give up their time to support the pilot. We utilised innovation funding from the Academy to access 2 training days from Tracy Jones at Chrysalis Mindset, which was excellent, and volunteer heads also benefited from half-day group sessions with Tracy throughout the year. The offer of support was open to all acting and serving primary head teachers in Swansea, and those who were interested were able to select a partner from the volunteer pool. Now, this was important because it was the flexibility that meant that they could actually meet with somebody that they felt safe and comfortable with. Agreements were drawn up and had to be signed before any sessions could take place. Confidentiality was paramount for Clwyd to succeed, but we also had to be clear in our processes regarding our safeguarding responsibilities. The initial agreement was for 6 one-hour sessions, although I know some more, had more sessions than that, and sessions were arranged at mutually agreed intervals and times. We made it clear that we were not qualified supervisors or counsellors, and we shared links to other services, such as education support, to ensure individuals are signposted to all the options, because there are options, as you've already seen, out there for us. The next few slides show some quotes from heads who gave Clwyd a go. The feedback was very positive, and the evidence was that we had met our aims. Heads spoke about feeling connected to others, people that they hadn't had conversations with before. And they also spoke about the benefits of having those conversations free of judgment. And that was something that came through very strongly. Although this final quote really sums up for me what we offered. We had a lovely chat, first time I'd smiled in days. You know, that really sums up what it's about. It's about building those connections, making sure that we've got someone that we can talk to. And actually, if that one person felt better after that conversation, then I think we did our job. Having evaluated the pilot, there were some pros and cons to the model, and it's certainly not a perfect model by any long shot. The pros were that it did provide a confidential space, separate from accountability, and it really helped develop networks across the city. In some cases, people formed connections with people they'd never even spoken to, and those connections have lasted. On the other hand, some heads appreciated what we were doing, but didn't engage because they didn't feel there was enough going wrong for them at that point in time. Their heads come up to me and say, oh, I'm okay at the moment, Russ. Everything's okay. But actually, we need to move beyond that. We need to recognise that this is something, as we've said in the Commission report, this is something that we should be entitled to. We should be able to have those discussions, not just when something is going wrong, but actually supporting us in our role on a daily or regular basis. Another disadvantage was that the volunteers only had limited training, and the opportunity to extend this training would have been really, really helpful. There were some aspects that were potential advantages and disadvantages. So some may have felt that actually supporting head teachers within the same LA was a little bit too close to home. But what it did allow was to make sure that people had similar understandings of similar situations. It also is true that what was an impact on the volunteers' head time, but all the volunteers agreed that the training they received from Tracy and the sessions they delivered were actually beneficial to them as well. Indeed, many saw their engagement as support for themselves. Clwyd was a pilot, and as I said, it wasn't perfect, but it is something that we've decided to continue within Swansea this year. We see it as another tool to support us in our roles. It helps build connections and relationships that bring us together and ultimately makes us stronger if we're together. To close, I want to make a point that we are educational leaders, but we're much more besides that as well. We have our own personal lives. We have other responsibilities. You know, we may be, a partner, a carer, a parent. All of those things are part of our lives as well. And we're constantly making decisions and thinking about what we need to be doing in our lives, either in work or outside of it. So how do we divide up that amount of time that we have? How do we divide up those roles and responsibilities? And what bits do we leave for us? Because we must not feel guilty about keeping something back for ourselves. And I'm going to say that again, because I've heard it in the room already this morning. We must not feel guilty about keeping something back for ourselves. Because without that focus, we will burn out. We won't be able to help others any longer, let alone ourselves. So it's something we really must make sure that we do. So my final point is that there is only a finite amount of you, and you should spread that precious amount out wisely. Yes, we should try new things. Yes, we should challenge ourselves, and of course, we must be supporting others. But we must always make sure that we stop, have that pause, and actually reflect on ourselves as well. Your attendance today shows you understand the need to think about your own well-being. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Academy too for putting education as leaders' well-being on the map, because they certainly have. But make sure you continue to look after yourselves as you go forward from here today. Diolch.